So we're going to talk about what do we mean when we say critical thinking and how all of this actually works. So we know everybody's got different definitions of critical thinking, but here are the key pieces of it. Not necessarily this list. Everybody has this list, but it has to be the fluent use of and the combination of these higher order skills. So I have to analyze in order to infer. I have to make predictions and evaluations, and all of it kind of works together. And the big part is I can't just teach you analysis skills. I have to teach you how to think about your thinking, to be metacognitive. How am I making sure that I'm actually thinking about how I'm thinking about stuff, which is really different. And this I thought was very perfect for what we're looking at. The teachers, having gone through thinking maps and actually done them with their students for a while, said we realized we were just assigning thinking rather than really teaching it. And so it has to be a conscious effort. That's really important. So when we look at the dangers of cognitive overload, this goes back to the 5 to 7 bits of information, and it goes back really to what you see in kids in a classroom when they get overwhelmed and they don't know how to do what you're asking them to do. And so so if you ask them to think about how the setting impacts the characters or the outcome in this particular story or whatever, they don't know how to handle all that. They get overloaded, which also is not a good thing for emotionally, because they minimize, they get very emotional, and then they just write a plot summary. Everybody's experienced that kind of thing, or they hit something at the surface, not because they don't know how to do it, but they don't know how to handle the language of it. They don't have the tools to do what we're asking them to do, not on their own. So when you're looking at working memory, the cognitive overload, literally, because you're looking at high order thinking, it means this higher part of your brain is thinking about it. If I'm very emotional, I get down to the survival part of my brain. So I literally can't think as well if I'm not emotionally secure in what we're doing. And if I don't have the tools and I get overwhelmed, then literally it's like a doubling effect. And so it kind of shuts down the critical thinking. So in order to really build the deep structure, you have to teach each critical thinking skill. What does comparing and contrasting look like? And then use it enough so that it becomes a habit. And that, I think, is for 1,000 different reasons, not taking the time to make thinking a habit is where we struggle in classrooms. Deliberate practice and metacognition are the essential elements to this. And deliberate practice is, let's look at your standards. Let's think about not just the content, but how I'm asking you to think about it. So now we know if we look at skills and habits and we make them, then they develop deep cognitive structures for critical thinking. And the impact of that, very often when I do thinking maps training for leaders, and we look at a problem and say, what's the impact of this problem, or what's the impact of this thing that you're implementing? That should be where the buy-in is. So if I look at this and it says, if kids own these deep structures, they're going to experience reduced cognitive overload. That's an emotional thing that adds a huge element to learning. They'll be better able to recall, retain, understand new information. They'll focus on learning and thinking about the content rather than just figuring out, oh my God, how should I think about that?